Good afternoon from the Asia Europe Foundation in Singapore. My name is Leonie Nagarajan, and together with the team of ASEF's Education Department, I warmly welcome you to the ASEF Youth Dialogue Series with ASEM Leaders. This dialogue series is part of the 4th ASEF Young Leaders Summit, which is the official youth side event of the upcoming 13th ASEM Summit in Cambodia. The ASEF Youth Leaders Summit focuses on the theme Sustainable Development in a Post-COVID-19 World, and we organize this dialogue today to ensure a good exchange between youth leaders and political leaders on sustainable development issues. Today, we organize our 3rd edition with a focus on Sustainable Development Goal 4, and in particular, the topic Youth in Human Resource Development and Digitalisation Education. We have the honor to welcome His Excellency Dato Lim Jock Hoi, who is the Secretary-General of the ASEAN Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN. And we start with opening remarks by the Secretary-General and a youth leader from Asia, before we move to our dialogue and conversation. And then we close with concluding remarks again by Secretary-General and a youth leader from Europe. I have now the pleasure to introduce His Excellency Dato Lim Jock Hoi. Your Excellency, in 2018, you were appointed as the 14th ASEAN Secretary-General, and you come from Brunei Darussalam. You have an extensive career in the diplomatic service, in particular in the multilateral field. You served as Brunei Darussalam senior official for the ASEAN Economic Community Pillar, the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, and the Asia-Europe meeting. You were a member of the high-level task force on ASEAN economic integration since 2001, and you were Brunei Darussalam's chief negotiator for the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement and led several other bilateral and multilateral trade negotiations. In the context of today's conversation, I would like to highlight that you started your professional career and entered the government service, however, not as a diplomat. You started as an education officer, and I see you smiling, and you served as a principal of a secondary school. So we are happy to see that your passion for education and work with young people has continued throughout the years. That's why you are here with us today, and we would like to discuss with you the youth's role in human resource development and digitalization education. The floor is yours, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Thank you for the remarks as well as the compliments that you have given to me. Excellencies, representative of the ASEAN Youth Europe Foundation, youth delegates, very good morning, and also good afternoon to our friends and partners across Asia, Europe, and ASEAN. I'm pleased to join you at this dialogue as part of the 4th ASEF Young Leaders Summit. I wish to congratulate the Asia Europe Foundation for organizing this, as it is an important platform that connects young people with leaders and decision makers, as well as strengthening the network and bonds of friendships among Asia and Europe youth. This is also a key event in the run-up to the 13th ASEM Summit, which will be held in November in Cambodia this year, with the theme of strengthening multilateralism for shared growth. The choice of this theme is timely, as ASEM partners have been calling for both the regions to remain alert and pull our efforts together to reinvigorate multilateralism amidst the rise of protectionism, political populism, and the sweeping impact of COVID-19 pandemic. I commend ASEM's commitment to engaging the youth so that they can contribute their views and ideas to address such challenges. For instance, ASEM Leader will also have a session with stakeholders, including representative of the ASEF Young Leaders Summit at the upcoming 13th ASEM Summit. Encourage you and your representative to voice your views and ideas during this session. Distinguished delegates, ASEAN has made a notable degree of progress in achieving the SDG as reported in the Sustainable Goal Report 2020. 6 ASEAN member states were listed among top 10 best performing countries in SDG index, with Thailand and Vietnam ranked among the top 50. However, COVID-19 pandemic has impacted our work towards achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and ASEAN Development Initiative. The pandemic has shone a spotlight on inequality, and underlined the need for inclusive action. It has also laid bare the risks that have plagued us for many years, such as inadequate health coverage and services, gap in social protection, structural inequality, environmental degradation, and of course, climate change crisis. Although ASEAN has experienced some setbacks in our SDG and community building efforts, we are poised for a stronger rebound as guided by the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework and its implementation plan. The SCRF function as an exit strategy for the COVID-19 pandemic also paved the way for ASEAN to recalibrate and retool our political, economic, and social cultural effort to build back better using a whole of the ASEAN community approach. Digitalization is a crucial part of our recovery process as it accounts for 30 out of 185 initiatives and programs under SCRF implementation plan. These efforts are also complemented by the ongoing work under the ASEAN Digital Master Plan 2025. No doubt, the emergence of the Delta variant has dampened our recovery efforts. However, I am confident of ASEAN resilience and continued success. The reason for my optimism lies in the fortitude and resourcefulness of our youth, which consists of 40% of our population. This dynamic group, which constitutes 34% of population, as I say just now, around 30 to 40%, in 2020 is the engine that drive ASEAN growth and prosperity. Ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 has given us 3 important lessons on education and human resource management. First, virtual learning and digital tools has proven the effectiveness in overcoming physical distance. In-person interaction were all but impossible. Second, the pandemic has forced the mass-scale introduction of digital content at all levels of education, starting an irreversible trend towards the digitalization of pedagogy, as well as learning and teaching materials. Third, the successful transition to work from home, made possible by widespread use of digital technologies, have redefined the workplace and work itself. ASEAN labor ministers have led this discussion through their statement on the future work, embracing technology for inclusive and sustainable growth. While it is premature to fully grasp the impact of these lessons, we are certain that the youth will be the forefront of the changing face of education and will be a feature prominently in the development of a new work paradigm. As a generation in our community that is the most comfortable, attuned, and savvy with digital resources, and technology, the youth is poised to take a leading role in redefining and shaping the modalities in how we learn, work, communicate, and manage our tangible and intangible resources. Distinguished delegates, the coming ASEAN success story will not be written in terms of the abundance of low-skilled labor force and natural resources. The emerging story would be crafted by young and transformative entrepreneurs such as Anthony Tan of Grab, Nadim Mekarim of Gojek, and Trung Man Kwan of Picketing, as well as by the contributions from countless young business persons, technocrats, artists, social workers, civil society leaders, and educators who will be leading the charge to diversify ASEAN economic and social landscape by tapping into the fourth industrial revolution and transforming our business model through disruptive innovation. We will leverage on our youth creative energies, inquisitive mind, and out-of-the-box thinking to propel the region into the digital age as we move to expand and upscale our economies. This agent of change play an indispensable role in the pursuit of post-pandemic recovery, sustainable development, and ASEAN community building efforts. In order to harness and realize the potential, we need to ensure that our youth is healthy, educated, skilled, and cost future ready. In addition, the important participation of the youth in combating climate change cannot be overstated. According to the 2021 Southeast Asia Climate Outlook released last week, 70% of respondents consider climate change as a serious and immediate threat, reflecting the region's vulnerability to the growing impact of stronger storm, floods, drought, and rising sea levels. Among others measures, we established the ASEAN Climate Change Initiative to strengthen regional coordination and cooperation addressing climate change. Work is also ongoing to finalize the framework for circular economy for the ASEAN Economic Community. In fact, it's already being endorsed by the economic minister, which would be a long way towards a resilient, sustainable green ASEAN community. The youth could also make an impactful contribution to our climate change mitigation efforts by supporting existing regional efforts, as well as participating in their respective national community initiative. Given the vast power of consumption and ability to galvanize public action through social media platforms, the youth could be a strong advocate to changing mindset and rising awareness on climate change, as well as to promoting green consumerism and environment-friendly lifestyle. Distinguished delegate, as you are well aware, ASEAN is a strong advocate of openness and inclusiveness, which are part of a guiding principle. Asia-Europe meeting, and in particular, ASEM Youth Dialogue, are manifestation of this tradition of engagement. I trust that the youth leader of Asia and Europe present here today will build a stronger bond of friendship, nurtured through long-standing diplomatic, economic, and people-to-people ties. I would like to single out one particular engagement that truly embodies the spirit of friendship and special mention. For special mention, I'm of course referring to Erasmus Plus program, which through the international credit mobility scheme has provided support for over 5,500 students and academic staff from ASEAN University to pursue short-term studies and teaching in European university, and conversely supported nearly 3,000 European students and academic staff to undertake short-term studies and teaching stints in ASEAN. The unique and commendable feature of ICM scheme lies in its emphasis on two-way exchanges and interaction between ASEAN and European counterparts. It is important to remind ourselves that ASEAN has much to learn from Europe, just as ASEAN has a lot to offer and share with our European friends. In the same spirit of broadening line of communication and empowering all segments of society to engage in the community, ASEAN is expanding its opportunity for our youth to participate and to contribute to policy making and community development. Our long-standing support is not only manifested in today's Young Leaders Summit, but also in various other modalities, such as ASEAN Leader interface with representatives of ASEAN youth at the sideline of the 36th ASEAN Summit in 2020 and the ASEAN Youth Forum in 2021. I'm also happy to share that the ASEAN Regional Forum has adopted a joint statement on promoting youth, peace, and security agenda at the ASEAN Regional Forum 28 August, in August 2021 to increase inclusive representation of youth, including youth-led organization in the prevention and resolution of conflicts, as well as in peace building and sustaining peace. This sentiment was similarly echoed in one of the key recommendations of the ASEAN Regional Study on Women, Peace and Security report, which drew attention to youth engaged in digital peace. The inclusion and acceptance of women in politics and security has indeed broken the gender barriers. The next transformative change that we should work towards is to break the generational barrier by facilitating youth to play a larger role in all matters, including peace and security. Indeed, the youth who are our future leader should be recognized as partners in the discussion to build the future which they will soon inherit and lead. On this note, I would like to conclude by adding my voice to the chorus of support for the youth to play a larger and more meaningful role in building a more equitable, digital inclusive, just, resilient, sustainable, green society and global community. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for setting the tone and the direction for our dialogue today. And allow me just to reiterate a few of your thoughts. You mentioned that youth is at the forefront in the changing face of education. Youth are the advocates for changing the mindset towards sustainable development. And yeah, you hope that youth can be more recognized as partners to build a sustainable future. And in this context, I hand over now to a youth leader. And our youth leader is Ms. Catherine Reyes. She is our ASEFYLS4 youth participant and representative from the Philippines. She will respond and share her views on the topic. Catherine, you graduated in European Studies and Political Sciences from Ateneo de Manila University in the Philippines. You're currently based in France. You study at the University of Strasbourg. You do a master's in European literary cultures. So Catherine, please, the floor is yours. Share with us your thoughts.
Thank you very much, Leonie. Good afternoon, Your Excellency, Dato Lim Jock Hoi. Good morning and good afternoon to our audience from Europe and Asia. Your Excellency, First and foremost, on behalf of all participants of the 4th ASEF Young Leaders Summit, I reaffirm our gratitude for taking time out of your very busy schedule, especially during this very precarious period, to join us here today. The points you have evoked, especially on digitalization, the need for resilience, and your optimism about the role of youth, shed light on the very difficult situation we find ourselves in today as today's youth workforce and the future workforce. As you have stated, I, in fact, form part of an Erasmus program, and like many of the delegates here, we see and we feel the importance of the exchange, not only through Erasmus, but channels like ASEF. Throughout history, youth have acted as catalysts for great social and political progress. In the present, they add to this the energy and the creativity to bring about social awareness and responsibility, innovation, and technological advancement that we see today across all societal sectors and developments. The startup scene, grassroots movements, climate positive marketing, and digital applications that serve every sector imaginable. Many of these initiatives have proven indispensable during the present pandemic and have reinforced the role of youth as a critical human resource in driving developing economies and in maintaining aging developed states. However, we cannot understate the burden COVID-19 and its subsequent restrictions have put upon youth in terms of psychological and financial strain, as solitude and anxiety have become prevalent. Furthermore, the pandemic economy has resulted in the loss of jobs, especially among young people and those in the non-formal sector. Both have resulted in an increase of young people, neither in school nor in the workforce. Studies have shown that even temporary educational setbacks have the potential to hinder an individual's future professional advancement, while also directly targeting a country's future long-term human resource capacity. Rapid developments in the digitalization of education offer a way to mitigate these problems, as we can see well through the platform we're using right now. MOOCs, online classrooms, and the generous offer of many publishing houses to open content for free to educators have helped in continuing to deliver quality education, even to the most vulnerable. Yet, the digital divide persists as a reality. We must likewise acknowledge that the digital classroom cannot replace the function of the physical classroom as a space for socialization and a space for social protection and well-being, especially for girls who are already projected to be the percentage of the global workforce most likely to disappear in larger numbers. In our following dialogue and conversation with you, Your Excellency, we would therefore like to reflect on the stakeholders in an unequal and socioeconomic and culturally diverse digital post-COVID workplace. The role and responsibilities we, the youth, will be asked to perform in the current and post-COVID world. And finally, the role international bodies, whether regional or transcontinental, will play within this context. I now pass the floor back to Leonie Nagarajan from ASEF, who will introduce today's moderators who, like myself, are all representatives of the 4th ASEF Young Leaders Summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for your initial thoughts and many of the points which you have raised. We will discuss now in more detail. So I have the pleasure to introduce our moderators, our 3 moderators today who will guide the conversation with the ASEAN Secretary-General. Thanks for being with us today. You're spread across different continents today. I start first with Suchen T from Singapore. Suchen graduated with a degree in economics and environmental engineering from Rice University, and you currently work as a manager at the Ministry of National Development and promote sustainability and livability for urban and land use policies in Singapore. Good to see you, Suchen. And then we have Akos Baumgartner from Hungary, but he's currently not based in Hungary, but far away in the US. Akos is a master's student in international relations at the Central European University, but he currently participates in the Board Globalization and International Affairs program and also interns at Watchlist on Children and Armed Conflict. Good to have you here, Akos. It's early in the morning in New York. It's not so early in Bangladesh. Hello, Lamia Mohsin. She is the co-founder of the NGO Standing Up for the Underprivileged, which works on areas such as social inclusion, reduced inequalities, and access to education. And Lamia works as a junior national consultant for UNDP in Bangladesh. So with this brief introduction, I hand over to you, our youth leaders, and maybe Suchen from Singapore, you start first. Please take the floor.
Thank you, Leonie, and hello, everyone. Thank you, Your Excellency, for joining us today. As someone who finished her education online during the COVID-19 pandemic and joined the workforce not too long ago, also in a virtual work setting, I really resonated with many of the points in your opening speech, particularly the concepts of changing educational pedagogies and a new work paradigm. We are very excited to hear you share more of your thoughts on youth in human resource development and the digitalization of education. So to start off the dialogue and conversation, we would like to follow from what Catherine ended her speech with, a call to reflect on the stakeholders in a culturally diverse digital post-COVID world. Your Excellency, who do you consider to be the most important stakeholders of digitalization of education in the hopefully soon to come post-COVID world? What responsibilities do they have, and how can they be made accountable for contributing to youth human resource development?
We in ASEAN recognizes that the digital transformation is here to stay. This is one area that we emphasize in our ASEAN Recovery Framework, which is part of the comprehensive exit strategy for us to transform the region out of this pandemic. One of the fifth pillars of our is digital transformation. And this is an opportunity for us to redesign and also digitize education. As you know, most of the students are out of school during the pandemic, and a lot of them are sourced through the technology. And we are very lucky that we have a technology to help them to undertake their study at home. And this is not good, but again, it is imperative that we use this technology to help them to educate the student at home. To realize this, we have emphasized on the crucial importance of linkage between and among access to digital technologies, digital literacy, and of course, transfer skill, inclusion, as well as equity and affordable to digital technologies. Public and private partnership is critical, and that helps the role of the young and the people in the future. We are also very cognizant on the varying degrees to which education has been digitalized among the ASEAN member states, and we need to work towards to further improve the integration of information and communication technology in education. As I said, we need to collaborate with relevant stakeholders, particularly young children and young people and education partners across the globe, as well as those related sector in areas such as open education resources and open access learning to help ensure the successful digital transformation education system throughout the ASEAN region. Equally important, the value of partnership that we have with private sector and the benefit of meaningful engaging children and young people in digital transformation. I think this is particularly important to all of us in order to develop this connectivity and help our young people to learn from home. So digital technology helps a lot, and we hope to leverage digital technology as hybrid rather than as a sole area for educating our people. And for that, we are emphasizing the importance of technology in our recovery plan. And a lot of work now is being being done through ICT as well as through economic side. And recently we have, as I say in my remark, we have endorsed the Bandar Seri Begawan digital roadmap to wire all the ASEAN member states so that we are seamless in our digital connectivity. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. Perhaps let's turn the tables a bit and focus on the role of the youth themselves. So you mentioned in your opening remarks that youth will be at the forefront of the changing face of education, and also that youth should be partners in building a more digitalized and sustainable world. So perhaps could you share more about how youth can contribute to the digitalization of education and what role they can play in this transformation?
I think the youth are very creative, very innovative, and very inquisitive because they learn very fast using the technology for their own learning or their own search for information. In general, I think there are 5 roles that youth can play in contributing to digitalization of education. Namely, as I said, they are very much critical thinkers, change makers, innovators, communicators, and also leading in this role. Specifically, ASEAN Youth Initiative has been contributing to ASEAN efforts in adapting to the digitalization of the education by creating digital education and skill development platform. They are very good in that. Creating job opportunity because of that through social entrepreneurship, and working with village community to promote digitalization, especially the vulnerable and medium and small and medium enterprises. And these are very important sectors. Use a lot of technology with the help of the youth, and they are able to access to the market and sell the product in a manner that was never done before. And this was even more being driven by the COVID-19 pandemic, where everybody wants to use digital in order to pay their product. In terms of achieving the Sustainable Development Goal in engagement with the implementation development programs, youth have been very active, involved in setting the national agenda and coordinating activity, which implementing support data collection, I think, and taking part in voluntary national review of their respective countries. These have been evidence in the report that youth are active in that. While the community level, youth also have been taking part in volunteers and taking also social entrepreneurs, which focus on SDG related issue. And overall, I think youth has done quite a lot of good service to the community, but more has to be done, and we need to empower them to do so in order to help, especially the informal workers and sectors, small and medium enterprises, which have been very successful in some countries in ASEAN, in particular in Indonesia. A lot of them depending on digital technology to sell and to promote their entrepreneur. So we need to empower them. We need to make sure youth like you will take a leading role in the future development of digital technology.
Thank you. Your response really made me reflect on my own experiences with digital technology and the community, and I will strive towards contributing in some of the ways you brought up. My final question is on the interface between digitalization and culture. The world is becoming more and more culturally diverse, and this affects even the digitalization of education as well. So in some countries, specific groups, particularly those with they are religiously extremists, may consider digitalization as an attempt to westernize and thus try to prevent it from playing a part in social development. In such cases, how can we bridge the cultural and ideological gap to ensure solidarity and good outcomes for youth?
Nombor 3 nih. Okay, I think that's a very good question. I think it's throughout 54 years of ASEAN existence, ASEAN has grown as a multicultural society. I think living in a cultural diverse region has shown us that the different ethnicity, culture, background, religious, and belief can coexist if we continue to work towards maintaining peace and promoting stability and harmony in the region. However, challenges to this stability and peaceful coexistence abound. For example, perhaps everyone can relate this to the rise of intolerance, distrust, and discrimination to a certain people and races due to uncertain and fear arising from COVID-19. These have been exacerbated by, of course, fake news on social media, enable the wave of digitalization sweeping across the globe. I think ASEAN, we have adopted the narrative of ASEAN identity in November 2020. It highlights the pivotal role of young people in strengthening the sense of ASEAN's-ness and the next generation leader. And I believe that this can be seen as a way to bridge cultural and ideological gap and ensure solidarity. And this ASEAN narrative is to foster the ASEAN people together so that they will be able to appreciate each other's cultural, each other way of doing things. And this is very important, and it takes quite a while for us to embrace to help to make sure that our young people will live in peace and harmony. ASEAN also has taken part in various other dialogue partners to convene people-to-people exchanges programs. I think the program exchanges is among the youth and Youth Leaders Forum. I think this is important to expose them to various other nationality. This is one of the key effort in fostering solidarity, not only among young people ASEAN, but also young people of other regions, including Europe. And we have done this many times through our ASEAN Europe program and within ASEAN EU program. And this helps us a lot to bridge the gap between our two regions and to make sure that they appreciate each other. That will increase the level of comfort when they become a leader of the nation. And we have to nurture now, and it's important that this sort of thing can be done and will be done in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for sharing your views. I will now pass on the floor to my co-moderator, Akosh.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Your Excellency, and good morning, everyone from New York. As a person joining from another continent outside the ASEM region, I would like to focus on cooperation and collaboration between, across, and within continents, especially about ASEM. Digitalization of education in the globalized and interconnected world requires cooperation and collaboration between states, and my question will focus on this topic. Your Excellency, how can ASEM contribute to bringing digitalized education to the youth amidst the ongoing pandemic in cooperation with other ASEM partners?
The role of technology is being recognized playing critical in education, especially during the pandemic. I think you have seen people resort to digital technology using internet at home to reach to education, to develop education. ASEAN Education Minister convened a conference of digital transformation of the education system throughout ASEAN on 15 October 2020. they reaffirmed the commitment, the ASEAN Education Ministry, to reimagine more inclusive, equitable regional education system through integration of technology in education. I think they have realized that they have to rely on digital technology, not only during the pandemic and post-pandemic, which is also critical to raise the level of education in ASEAN member states. The conference also emphasized the importance of a partnership with partners, private sectors, as well as young people to support digital transformation of education system across the ASEAN region. We use a lot of private sector. We collaborate with those technology company to address the issue of digital transformation, and they have provided a lot of help through content as well as through leveraging their technology that they provided in ASEAN country. And specifically, they underlined the importance of partnership and segment, particularly in private sector, is critical in providing. One is to create innovative and digital literacy solution. I think this is working with private sector. Enable access to digital technology. Again, we have to work with private sector because they are the provider of the solution and technology, and ensure that education can be provided, can provide relevant skills needed for the labor market. I think we need to make sure our students is being provided the skill that needed in the future market. Other area of collaboration with relevant stakeholders, including young people in partner countries, are open to education resources and also open to access to learning. I think that's critical in order to address the issue of young people. It must be noted the ASEAN function is to provide enabling ecosystem to facilitate cooperation, and primary responsibility is the implementation of digitalization of education in the member state. I think through this education conference, we are able to learn from each other best practices and bringing in the private sector to enable us to work closely and provide education through technology to our students. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And as a follow-up question, I would like to ask you, what are the three major challenges that the youth in human resource development is facing in the ASEAN? And how can the ASEAN give resilient answers to these challenges?
I think we have identified three challenges, I think. One is the challenges on fourth industrial revolution, because it has a lot of impact to the youth in terms of employment, in terms of way of doing things in the future, and the importance of digital. And second is this skills gap, how we provide skill gap to them. And third, ongoing future and future crisis, I think like pandemic is another thing. So on the industrial revolution, I think fourth industrial revolution is a lot of things happening, Internet of Things, robotic, all those elements, really very important for our youth to understand. If you look at the ILO report 2016, Cambodia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam will lose about half of their jobs by 2025 due to automation. See how challenging for the country concerned to make sure they are future ready in the future. If robotic automation came in the industry and take over the job, and we have to skill and reskill our people to make sure they are relevant. And this is what Singapore is doing at the moment. And Singapore has been doing many years already in this area. So we had to leverage and to to uh, to do the best practices what other countries do. The challenges of this major member state is to replace the expected job and to sustain economic development, and also very important is to avoid political unrest due to high unemployment. So we have to be ready. Our education has to be ready to help them to retrain and reskill, and so that they will be able to venture into other professions. I think if you think 50%, that's huge amount of unemployed workers that has to be replaced by 2025. But anyway, that's one area. Skill gap, I think, is also an important. ASEAN has to avoid skill gap among the young people. Young people must be equipped with necessary skill. The future works. Education system across the globe needs to be to adapt. Inability of the system to provide young people with this necessary skill cause mismatch. A lot of them are mismatched and needed. So we need to make sure they are matched to what the job opportunities are. And the growing portion of young youth lacking basic skill and to participate in the workforce, which is unprecedented rates of youth unemployment and underemployment. Hence, the concepts of informal apprenticeship in other form of training or informal economy should be analyzed and critical, and consider must be given to, as I say, upgrading, linking them to formal, and TVET education is critical in order to acquire skill among the youth, procedure to promote recognition, also a very important validation, and certification of their work, of their skill are needed to strengthen and could be applied in a larger scale. So we need to reskill them to make sure that our education through TVET or TVET qualification are recognized among the member state so that they can move from one place to the other, and the skill is recognized, the validate, and the recognition to be strengthened to apply in large scale. I think this is very important. And third one is the ongoing and future crisis. I think this is in anticipation of what's going on. COVID-19 has accelerated the rate of 4IR, especially in the area of technology. And in April 2020, Microsoft report that they have witnessed 2 years worth of digital transformation in 2 months. How fast it's been transformed within 2 months. The pandemic also highlighted the critical issue in ASEAN regarding education equity, quality, and efficiency. I think this is, and therefore, increase an urgency to transform our education system across the ASEAN and other regions to ensure that they can provide skill on demand by labor market, as well as equip youth with adaptability and resilience to face the future crisis. And this pandemic, COVID-19, will not be the last, or there'll be more to come. So we have to get ready for our education system in the region. So these are 3 areas which I think fourth industrial revolution, which is already going on. We have to develop a skill gap so that the gap will not be very far, and we reskill and upskilling them. And of course, we have to get ready on the ongoing and future crisis. Future crisis may be calamity, maybe what you call climate crisis or others. We don't know, anything can happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And my last question, focusing on collaboration and cooperation, to follow up the point that you raised with the SDGs. How can Asia and Europe work together better to ensure that in line with SDG 4 quality education, the youth will have access to lifelong learning opportunities in a digitalized and interconnected world?
I think there's a need to adapt to the education systems and to better equip flexible learning pathway. We view to attaining inclusive quality of education and promoting life learning for all is well recognized in Education 2030 Agenda, SDG 4. I think this is indeed part of the SDG. The agenda also encourages the country concerned and countries to develop well-integrated system that provide learning pathway for all students in the form of entry, re-entry for all ages and all education levels, stronger linkages between formal and non-formal structure, recognition, validation, accreditation of knowledge and skill acquired through an informal or informal way. I think this is critical. As for Asia and Europe, can work together to provide a platform for partners and stakeholders to exchange view, idea on policies, practices, and research-based evidence of life learning and promote greater access and participation of our youth. I think we will have to work together in order to address the SDG 4, the quality of education based on informal or formal youth education, and digital is also critical here to connect the two. So I hope that we can work together under the platform of ASEM. There's a greater opportunity for ASEAN and Europe, as well as Asia, Europe ministers or policymakers, as well as youth, to provide views, ideas, how to work together to ensure that we can together promote and also adhere to the SDG 4, which is very critical for all of us, especially youth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Now I invite my colleague Lamia to the stage to state her questions on equal opportunities for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Akos, for giving me the floor. Your Excellency, good afternoon from Dhaka, Bangladesh. And thank you very much for gracing us with your presence today and for your extremely articulate words on how the digital revolution has impacted education as a sector and the role of the youth and the ASEAN in building a more connected and resilient world. So far, we have listened to the benefits of digitalization and its transformational impact on the lives of youth. And Your Excellency, in your previous remarks, you have reinforced the need, of course, for private sector mobilization to ensure access to digital tools for education. However, we all know that these opportunities, these tools are not available to all, and we have seen how digital divide has created an almost tangible inequality in terms of opportunity during the onset of a global pandemic, especially. So, Your Excellency, as you may know, that whenever we talk about different forms of inequality, the rural-urban divide is a category that perhaps is more omnipresent and prevalent worldwide. My country, Bangladesh, for example, has a clear-cut digital inequality between rural and urban areas, which is primarily caused by income and wealth disparity. So, Your Excellency, my question to you would be that how do we ensure inclusive involvement for students who have the potential but cannot access the existing limited opportunities? Or in other words, how do we bridge the digital gap between people living in rural urban areas and help them to get the same access to education in both the short term and the long term?
Thank you. I think this is a perennial question from any countries in ASEAN or in Europe, more in ASEAN, because there are so many rural students and also urban student and opportunity are different. But nevertheless, we in ASEAN upholding the principle of quality, equity, and inclusion in education is an important priority, I think, in ASEAN education sector. I think that has some reserved support for all the political masters, including our education minister. The ASEAN Work Plan 2021-2025 anchor on a robust lifelong learning framework encompassing different stages and modalities of education and catering to the needs and the context of all learners, including disadvantaged group. I think we have provided that sort of provision in our 2021-2025 action plan to make sure that our disadvantaged people, whether they are disadvantaged because of their sex or their uh, nature of society where they live, these are all taken care. To support the region, most marginalized and disadvantaged learners, I think ASEAN has implemented one program called Regional Action for the Implementation ASEAN's Declaration on Strengthening Education for out-of-school children and youth, under which they are jointly effort towards coherent knowledge and management and policy, regional national program initiative, as well as advocacy and stakeholder. And this is very important because we think that strengthening education for out of school children are critical to make sure that they are the one who will be looking after and will be taken care by the state. That will include those people, those students in the rural area, all often marginalized by way of infrastructure and other imperative. In order to gain deeper understanding and the gender equality and inclusion issue, the impact of higher education in the region, study on gender equality, diversity, inclusion in higher education in ASEAN is being conducted through the eShare support for higher education in the region. Asia, Europe, ASEAN from European side, they have helped a lot in addressing those issues of marginalization of the two regions from the rural and the urban. The access to opportunity is critical, as we say that digital gap between urban and the rural area is being addressed by our action plan in the comprehensive ASEAN regional comprehensive recovery plan, and that plan emphasizes importance of inclusive digital transformation, be it in the urban elite or in the rural area. This is an area that have been putting greater emphasis. We have put greater emphasis by the government to make sure that this digital inclusive transformation is being felt in every part of the country, in region, in ASEAN. So things are being taken care, but again, reality is not easy. It involves costs, but because of technology, I think we'll be able to service the people in rural area and provide them with equal access to technology.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your insightful remarks. And I believe we can all resonate with your views on addressing issues of marginalization of various disadvantaged groups in ensuring that they have equal access to digital education tools. Your Excellency, due to the disruptive nature of the pandemic, some graduates have had the privilege to physically learn in school, while others haven't, may not only be graduating from online schools in the future. Although unarguably we cannot deny that technology has been a blessing, and especially considering today's context, the significance of physical learning experience in classrooms cannot be nullified either. So my next question to you is, how can human resources tackle the gap in education and thereby varying degrees of graduate skills?
Online education, I think online schooling or virtual learning is a norm, I think, during this time of COVID-19. I think COVID-19 is more than a year and coming 2 years. While some online schooling may continue in the post-pandemic era, I think physical learning will continue to be the primary uh, modality or education in the foreseeable future. I think once the pandemic is being mitigated, I think uh, the physical learning will be coming, and of course there will be some hybrid. Countless studies have shown that that in-person teaching and learning is the most effective form of their uh, form of learning and form of teaching also. In universities, for example, students can learn much more from the professor than from peer interaction and group learning. I think this is important. A rapid regional assessment to assess the extent of impact of COVID-19 on labor, social welfare, and sector were conducted last year to support ASEAN member states in responding to the crisis. Assessment shed light at some critical issues such as education surrounding equity. I think is quality and efficiency was very much highlighted during the study. The online education due to COVID-19 has also revealed that digital divide in ASEAN is also occurring between those who have access to digital learning and opportunity and those that do not have, often in remote area. These are highlighted by you in your question just now, that of course there is a discrepancy between the two regions. The gap in education and skill in graduate will also persist, and individual learn as individual learns part of the different speed and capacity. Thus, I think it's important to note that the digital transformation in education system throughout ASEAN highlighted the role of digital technology in the growing skill and to promote not only digital literacy, but also transferable skill across the educations in ASEAN. So the results, human resource uh, gap in education and skill in graduate uh, is there, but I think we need to enhance it, whether it's learning through online or physical education. But this gap has to be undertaken and to be addressed by the educators in our education system. We realize that there is some discrepancy, some gap in between, but we need to narrow the gap. For example, in digital technology, and it's important that we narrow the gap between the rural and the urban area, so that the opportunity between the youth of the two sector will be narrow and will be much more the same. So I see that there's a important area that we need to address. Of course, the gap need to be narrow in the future with new technology valuable in the market. And this is hence important that we should work together with the private sector, because they are the one who assess the skill and the gap that needed for the market in the future. So it's not only educators. There's no point for us to educate somebody, whether it's online or physical. when there's no need, or what you call it, mismatch in the market. So we need to come to bring the private sector on board so that they will tell us exactly what to do, and so that our education system will be very much in line with what the market needs in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for engaging with us today in such an important and timely discussion, and for sharing with us your valuable views through this wonderful dialogue organized by the 4th ASEF Young Leaders Summit. I would now like to hand over the mic to Ms. Leonie Nagarajan for conducting the rest of the dialogue session.
Thank you so much, Lamia, and thank you, Your Excellency, for this meaningful conversation. I think we all hope that several of the issues which have been discussed, in particular those linked to equity, inclusion in education and skills development, but also those in terms of youth engagement and participation in political decision-making will be picked up. And there are several opportunities this year in the ASEM context. There's an ASEM Education Minister meeting taking place in December. It's hosted by the Thai government. And there's obviously the 13th ASEM Summit, which is hosted by the Government of Cambodia at the end of November. So hopefully some of these voices will be heard. And we have a youth declaration also at the ASEM Summit. And I'm quite sure that a number of these issues will be part also of the youth declaration for the ASEM leaders. For the remaining part of the session, I would like to invite now an ASEFYLS youth representative from Europe to share some concluding remarks, and that is Nicolas van de Kerkhoven. And Nicolas is from Belgium. He recently completed his second master's degree in European Interdisciplinary Studies from the College of Europe in Natolin, Poland. The College of Europe in Natolin is also our partner for this ASEF Young Leaders Summit. But you're currently not in Poland. You're currently interning at the Belgian embassy in Tunis. Nicolas, please.
Thank you very much, Leonie. Good afternoon to Your Excellency, Dato Lim Jock Hoi. Good afternoon to our audience from Asia and Europe. On behalf of the participants of the 4th Asia-Europe Foundation Young Leaders Summit, I would like to express my gratitude to His Excellency for his presence today and his insightful remarks. This dialogue told us that youth have the power to make a difference in human resource development and in the digitalization of education. Without doubt, this is an ongoing process, and efforts must be intensified to bridge the digital gap, whether it is at the level of intergenerational disparities and the ability to use new technologies, or at the level of socio-economic backgrounds within the country or across regions. During our conversation today, there was agreement that a virtual classroom or a meeting will never replace the function of a physical classroom. At the same time, we must recognize that the virtual setup has proven to be an indispensable option for human connection and mobility and continued teaching and learning in a safe environment during the pandemic. Youth have been leading the way in exploring new technological avenues and in opening up new opportunities of communication and engagement. In this regard, it is important to support every citizen at any age to become digitally literate and to ensure equitable access to information and knowledge. In today's digital world, this means access to technology and digital equipment and internet connection and relevant education and training. Throughout our collaborations as part of the 4th Asia-Europe Foundation Young Leaders Summit, we realized that living in an urban or rural environment plays a less dominant role in being connected with others and in collaborating in virtual work environments. As Asians and Europeans, and with our global counterparts, we have demonstrated how we can overcome virtual borders, cooperate, and join forces on projects we are passionate about. Having said that, and looking into the future, there is, however, still one key missing tool in the education digitalization matrix that needs to be tackled. It is sustainable connectivity. As ASEF's Executive Director, Ambassador Morikawa Toru highlighted at a recent Asia-Europe dialogue, We need a green, socially and digitally integrated world. I fully support this thought, not only as a representative of the Belgian youth, but together with my peers from the 4th Asia Europe Foundation Young Leaders Summit. We invite ASEM leaders to follow suit and develop relevant policies to be implemented across our two regions. Youth have to be part of the policy development process. We are ready to implement concrete actions on the ground to achieve this goal. As the Master Plan for ASEAN Connectivity 2025 states, we want to create a network of people and infrastructure to improve the way we live, work, and travel. This applies to the whole ASEM community, especially for the strategic areas of digital innovation and people mobility. We hope that all of us will be able to take the digital train whose locomotive will be co-driven by young people eager to build a more equal and fair society and ultimately a better world. Thank you for your attention, and again, thank you, Your Excellency, for gracing our dialogue today and for engaging with us in this meaningful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicolas. And the last remarks, I hand over back to His Excellency Dato Lim Jock Hoi, please.
Thank you, Catherine and Nicola, for the insightful opening and closing statements. Also, thank to Lamia, Akos, and Suchin for the excellent moderating. And my appreciation to Ms. Loni Nagarajan for presiding over this event this afternoon. Our speakers and youth delegates, it has been a pleasure for me to be part of this dialogue with you, especially the young people of Asia and Europe. I commend the depth and breadth of thought and idea that you have shared with me this afternoon, which demonstrates your passion in strengthening the cooperation between ASEAN, Asia, and Europe towards a more adaptable and resilient education system. Due to pandemic, the past couple of years has been challenging, not only for students and fresh graduates, but also young professionals and entrepreneurs around the globe. However, as Nicolas mentioned in his remark, international cooperation and collaboration on various stakeholders, including youth from different regions who are passionate in creating a more equitable, inclusive access to education, may eventually help us to overcome the virtual borders. Build back better from the pandemic, particularly in adapting to the challenging landscape of education system, is indeed crucial for ASEAN. The Master Plan of ASEAN Connectivity 2025 has been a guiding ASEAN towards a more connected and integrated community, which is competitive and inclusive. Under the ASEAN Connectivity Master Plan, education exchange programs are one of the key measures in promoting people-to-people exchange within and beyond the region. I'm pleased to highlight Asia Europe Young Leaders Summit is a good model for cross-regional exchange programs, which will strengthen the capacity of young people in international cooperation and assure that ASEAN will work together with Asia Foundation to advance our collaboration in the future. Before ending my remarks, I would like to once again congratulate the Asia Europe Foundation for these successful events, as well as the youth delegate for the hard work in preparing this important dialogue. I wish you success in your undertaking and your future undertaking, and wish to make sure that we will again work together and in order to advance the SDG 4. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Secretary-General, for these concluding remarks and to further reflect on, but hopefully also to take on board for further action. And here I would like to quote again Nicholas. I liked very much his metaphor that we should all be part and take the digital train, but whose locomotive will be co-driven by young people eager to build a more equal and fair society and ultimately a better world. So ASEF and ASEF's Education Department, we are glad to provide the fuel for this train, for this locomotive. It should be probably better sustainable energy and not fuel in its typical sense, but we will be definitely more than passengers. We will be part of it. With this, thank you again so much, His Excellency Dato Lim Jock Hoi, for being with us. A big thank you to our three moderators, Suchin, Akosh, Lamia. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Nicholas, and also to our audience for being with us today. Have a good Monday, have a good week, and we'll see you again hopefully soon.